now therapy, and the citizens of the state of Michigan. The Executive Committee appreciates his dedication and service and wishes him every success in his future endeavors. And with that, do I have a motion to approve the resolution?
Support.
Moved and supported. We can move to roll call.
Was that Ms. Artisana and Dr. Pink?
Yes.
Yep, thank you. Ms. Artisana?
Yes.
Ms. Flynn?
Yes.
Ms. Gonzalez? Yes. Ms. Grassi?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yeah.
Ms. Hammoud?
Yes.
Mr. Lutz?
Yes.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Ms. Montgomery Tabron?
Yes.
Yes. Dr. Pink?
Yes.
Mr. Sutherland? Mayor Taylor?
Yes.
Ms. Tomina? The motion passes.
Great, thank you. We've now reached the CEO's report, so I will turn it over to Quentin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, everyone. I will begin and be brief, well, overall with the report because I have colleagues who are going to fill in the rest. But really, gratitude to our outgoing chair, Awanate Kabina, and also to our new chair, Christina Grassi, and our continuing vice chair, Krista Flynn, and to all the members of the MEDC Executive Committee. We don't take it lightly, the time, the reputational capital, and the investment that you make in making sure that our state is as competitive as it possibly can. So I'm grateful to each of you. Second expression of gratitude really to my teammates. There's always going to be a sports analogy, so I will focus on Ferris State University's excellence in football. The Bulldogs, 3 national championships in 4 years. And we know that there's always transitions, there are always challenges, but Ferris State has been able to be consistent and focus on the end goal, which is delivering incredible performance on the gridiron. I'm very grateful to my colleagues for their continued focus on executing the Make It in Michigan economic development strategy, focus on attracting and developing people, cultivating and revitalizing places, and then competing for and winning projects. I am grateful and edified by their professionalism. Next slide, please. So we are aware of the various headwinds, cross currents that we are facing in just as a nation and as a world. Next slide, please. The cross currents are actually in the slide deck as we do a 360-degree turn. So one, as you sort of adjust your eyesight, heightened geopolitical and regulatory risk. We obviously continue to see as we have changes at the state, local, and federal level. We see the conversations that are going on international trade policy, but we also see continued geopolitical risks with continuing difficult and tragic situations on the European and Asian continents. One, rapidly emerging industries. We're all, if you add AI to a sentence, you look really smart and brilliant. But the reality of it is AI is fundamentally, and the emergence of machine learning is fundamentally changing sectors ranging from the law to education to mobility to defense and aerospace. And we're just at the beginning precipice of that. Second, we're seeing competitive landscape. We are seeing our friends to the north who we compete in Canada beginning to be less willing to spend dollars in Michigan as we continue to work through how trade policy between the two nations. And we're beginning to see the consequence of that because so much of our advanced manufacturing sector is tied into supply change that involve not only Canada, but our friends to the south and Mexico. And so we're seeing that competitive landscape, but we're also seeing it with other states. We're seeing them increasingly continue to add tools to their toolbox, reform policies, and be ever more competitive as states understand that we are in a global competition to capture capital, to capture not only financial and investment capital, but more importantly, human capital, people, and making sure that locales, states, in the case of Michigan, can really make sure that they can stand out on a global stage. And then finally, we just saw the recent tragedy in Texas most recently remind us this, but the increased frequency of unbudgeted disaster response events. And why do I mention that? Because they're unbudgeted. Hundreds of millions of dollars, and if not billions, are going to have to be provided to the state of Texas. For instance, we've obviously had challenges, most recently the winter storms that affected the upper lower peninsula and the UP. We've had other challenges. So this increased frequency of unbudgeted disaster response events, not only, and we have a number of elected officials here who can talk to this, but the reality of it is that it definitely complicates and adds another dimension to where companies are going to cite their investments as they figure out ways to try to mitigate the increased frequency. Next slide, please. But, you know, amid cross currents, there's always as Ferris State and other champions, I want to shout out the Tigers, who still have the best record in the major leagues. And I'm very excited about the Lions and Pistons and Red Wings. But the point is, amid all that, amid the crosswinds, if you're going to, or cross currents, if you're going to be a successful athlete or part of any team, the saying is focus on the next play. And I can't tell you how proud I am of my colleagues who push me every day to focus on the next day, focus on the next opportunity, focus on the next engagement. So with that, let me talk about our wins. And 2025 has been an opportunity for us to significantly be able to demonstrate the success of the Make It in Michigan economic development strategy. But we've also been very focused on those things that we as MEDC can control, which is making sure that we provide the best opportunities for our personnel. We have make sure that we are prudent stewards financially, that we have transparent processes, that we have thoughtful strategic planning, and making sure that we aggressively manage the perception of Michigan. And we've had some great successes that, in fact, most recently, we just finished a Reindustrialized 2.0 conference in Detroit. And I can't tell you how many people said to us, we hadn't been to Detroit in the 90s, if not ever. And we're just impressed by what has happened. And I think as people travel all across the state, whether here in lovely Traverse City or elsewhere on the west side of the state or in the UP, increasingly we are realizing that people just haven't taken a look always at Michigan as much as they should. And so we've been very aggressive about trying to make sure that people understand Michigan in 2025 and not Michigan in 2000 or 2010 and things of that nature. So I want to brag because I'm a Southerner. And one of the things we say back home, it ain't bragging if it's true. So we have the receipts. So next slide, please. So MEDC recently this year was one of 2 state economic development agencies to receive the AEDO accreditation process. Why is this important? In every industry, whether you are a lawyer or a doctor or a business person, there's always an industry association. And in economic development, it's the International Economic Development Council. And the most rigorous self-examination voluntarily that an organization that practices in the economic development space can undertake is to go through the accredited economic development organization. You have a third party They come in, they spend a week, they look at everything from your financial to your internal processes. They look at how you're going about executing your mission, everything from business attraction to compliance to working in talent, small business, and the other dimensions of MEDC ranging from SHPO to the Michigan Arts and Culture Council. And after this, they write a report, they go back and forth. I was very grateful that Governor Whitmer herself participated in this, as well as other leaders, some of you on the executive committee. And we were awarded in the late spring as only the second economic development organization at the state level to be an AEDO. Next slide. So CNBC has probably the most recognized ranking of the 50 states when it comes to the environment for doing business. And Michigan reached a historic high, number 6. We moved up from number 9, 3 places. Very proud of that. We are not going to stop until we reach number 1. But you can see the various categories. It's one of the most rigorous methodology in all of rankings. And you can see our growth, number 18 in the economy, 15 in infrastructure, 13 in workforce. But just want to let you know that for the cost of doing business, I want to especially highlight we're number 4 for that. We're up from 12, and we're now ahead of Texas. Think about that. Michigan is ahead of Texas in the cost of doing business, and we moved up 8 slots. And we will continue to understand the methodology. More importantly, listen to our business leaders, companies across the state, across both peninsulas, to make sure that we are listening and as best as we possibly can, developing responsible policies and responsive practices. Next slide. So a few other rankings, area development, Silver Shovel, recognized 12 transformational projects, including a number here in Michigan across both peninsulas. And this is really kind of an insiders for people who do site selection, site development. We have representatives from both of our major publicly traded utilities. They can tell you that their economic development teams frequently look at area development and look at these rankings. Business facilities is the source for site selectors, and a crucial part of the decision for a lot of companies is they employ professionals who help them decide where to site projects. And so we were able to receive a high ranking from business facilities. I was remiss in saying about the area development, they also do a top states for doing business, and Michigan broke into the top 10 on that. And then finally, the CC Awards are from Trade and Industry Development, another magazine and periodical that's focused on the industry. We received 2 awards from there. And then IEDC, 6 awards in excellence, focus on our talent solutions, forging strong partnerships, and establishing Michigan as a leader in mobility technology and clean energy. Next slide. Further receipts. Leading in dual-use mobility innovation. This is the first uncrewed triple challenge. Why is this important? One of the things that we've heard from the Trump-Vance administration is the importance and the desire to modernize defense and aerospace for dual-use purposes. There's been a lot of focus on domesticating the drone industry. And so this uncrewed triple challenge, which we worked very closely with the Michigan National Guard and Major General Paul Rogers, our Office of Mobility and Electrification led by Justine Johnson, our state Michigan Chief Innovation Ecosystem Officer, Ben Marchiona, and so many members of our team came together to have a very successful and uncrewed triple challenge by air, water, and land. And really, this was allowed us to really, in an international context, focus on the unique domain that Michigan has. You can uniquely test things in Michigan's domain. Because of our vast space, we are the largest state fully east of the Mississippi River, and being able to test drone delivery and efficacy on by land, air, and water is truly an advantage that we continue to market, and we're grateful for the work of our team. Next slide. We are also in support of the Office of Defense and Aerospace Innovation. Over a year ago, Governor Whitmer really challenged me and challenged my colleagues. We need to make sure that we can, given the evolution of dual use in aerospace and defense, we need to make sure that we have a defense and aerospace focus that matches the moment. So we reimagined our Michigan Defense Center, created the Office of Defense and Aerospace Innovation that's led by John Gutierrez, and we have been focused on targeting decision makers in Washington. I think in no small measure, along with the advocacy of the governor, congressional folks, as well as local leaders, including Mayor Taylor, led in part to the announcement of the F-15EX fighter mission coming to Selfridge because of the highest focus. I mean, we are the arsenal of democracy, but I think for a little too long, maybe we assume people knew that. So you have to constantly remind people, and this is an active campaign in the DC market that we're doing in support of that Office of Defense and Aerospace Innovation. Next slide. Domestic and global investment missions. I can't say enough that when you have a leader, a governor like Governor Whitmer, who's willing to take our message across the world in support of companies that have already made investments, in support of countries that have already expressed interest in Michigan, it is vitally important. And this is most recent investment mission to Australia. I can tell you, we had a memorandum of understanding with Australia that had been in place since 2023. We renewed it. Australia has frequent MOUs, but they were so, I guess the only way to describe it, excited. The Governor Whitmer had been only the fourth governor that made the trip recently to Australia. And being in that market unlocked certain opportunities, certain connectiveness, a certain level of we see you, we value you, we're invested, that you can't get over Zoom. And I can tell you, we're already reaping tremendous benefit from that already. I will tell you that we went to the states of New South Wales, where Sydney, and then also to Victoria, where Melbourne, and then to the Australian state territory with Canberra, the national capital. And there's such a similarity, especially with Victoria and Melbourne. The advanced manufacturing sector, incredibly diverse cuisine, the agribusiness. So it felt like being at home. And in fact, when I get back this evening, I have a call with Australia. So they are willing to continue to invest, and and to continue to deepen the relationship. They have a tremendous extractive economy. They are looking for processing partners. A lot of what they extract from Australia gets processed in China. We understand there's an opportunity potentially to figure out there's ways for Michigan maybe to be involved in that, and stay tuned to that. We've also had historic investment mission to the UAE and Bahrain. We also visited UK and Ireland, Spain. We continue to engage with our friends in Japan and South Korea and the people of Taiwan. And so this ramped up focus on investment mission allows us to continue to control the narrative, to show that we're invested. Michigan is a remarkably international state. As you know, we have the most active border crossing with Canada, trade corridor. We now, in addition to the Ambassador Bridge, will soon be bringing online the Gordie Howe Bridge, and eventually trade will stabilize. And you need to be front of mind and show that you are invested in engaging globally through good and bad times and whatever headwinds. I will just, before we turn to the next slide, just about Australia, they're very focused on AUKUS. They spend a lot of talking about the opportunities in aerospace and defense because of the partnership or the pact between the US, the UK, and Australia. So that affords us some opportunities that we hopefully will continue to leverage and deepen those relationships. Next slide. This is a slide from Michigan Tech, and just last week, in the entrepreneurial innovation space, Governor Whitmer announced the first 8 recipients of the Michigan Innovation Fund, which was a $60 million appropriation used for entrepreneurial support. You know, Ben and his team, Ben Marciona, the state's first chief innovation ecosystem officer, has been in this role for just over a year, and I can't tell you how helpful Ben has been. In fact, Ben, in addition to making sure that we got out the funds for the Innovation Fund, was one of the champions behind the state of Michigan working with others to bring Reindustrialize 2.0, that conference, to Detroit. And I can tell you already, literally this morning, I started this morning having an email exchange with folks that we had met at Industrialize. This opportunity to make sure that Michigan is at the forefront of the 21st century's industrial development in the U.S. is really part and parcel, but it's also about creating buzz, making sure that you're in the consideration set. And I think fundamentally having people see Detroit, and it was an incredible venue at the department at Hudson's. And so I'm grateful for Ben. I'm grateful also for the governor spent time with that, meeting with companies, also appearing on a panel with Doug Song that was moderated by Ben. So we feel very good. We are not naive. There's a lot of work that remains to be done. But many of you probably know these are very challenging headwinds to fundraising in the venture market, given a variety of some of the cross currents that we mentioned earlier. But we are in the game, and not only in the game, but in the game with a plan that encompasses all of Team Michigan. Next slide, please. Small business. Look, we talked about the Make It Michigan economic development strategy focused on people, places, and projects. That whole strategy is undergirded by small business. And whether it's our Match on Main program, our technical assistance that we provide, or through our support of small business centers, small business development centers, or Apex accelerators in the defense and aerospace sector, or smart zones, we continue to make sure that we are doing what we can. We obviously are trying to figure out how to do more to make sure our small and medium-sized business. What you see on the slide is Lean Rocket Lab, which is allows companies, small businesses to really learn best practices to get to minimal viable product without expending a lot of capital. One of the things that we realize that we have to be holistic. As small businesses will tell you, in addition to capital and mentorship, is having customers who can pay. And that's been the key to why Michigan has been so successful over the years and why so many states envy what we have. The fact that we have these incredible supply chains of mobility and defense and aerospace and agribusiness and life sciences, the ability to have customers who pay. With that, next slide, I think that's my final slide. Our work continues. We remain focused. We are confident that we have not only the ability to navigate any headwinds or cross currents, but more importantly, we have the ability to develop trade winds, to develop tailwinds. And I will just list 3 before I'll cede the mic. 1, Michigan's people. You're not going to find a group of people who can circle the wagons more than Michiganders. And I say that as someone who is a Michigander by choice, who's lived in a number of different places. I'm a native Floridian, but I can tell you, no one circles the wagon. Once upon a time, Chris Berman on SportsCenter used to say that about the Buffalo Bills, but it's really about Michiganders. Because Michiganders have shown the ability to continue to not only persist, but conquer, whether it was as the arsenal of democracy, going through the 2008, 2010, and now as we deal in the 2020s. The second thing is we have a focus on doing deep tech, hard tech well, from small and medium-sized companies, from startups that will survive any administration. We have a tremendous foundation. We know who we are. We plan to execute on that. And then the last thing is we have invested people like you who are volunteers who are willing to give your time and provide strategic governance to us. So thank you very much for your time and attention. Sorry, I went a little over, but I will turn it now back over to our vice chair.
Right. I think actually Chair,
Oh, I'm sorry.
that's okay. Although it's heading to me anyway, so I do have some comments.
Please.
Might as well just take it on. The Personnel and Compensation Subcommittee met in May and discussed healthcare costs in the anticipation of the upcoming fiscal year. We also convened in June and July to review proposed updates to the corporate compensation policy and corporate salary structure. The subcommittee recommends approval of what we're going to discuss today. The subcommittee met again in July and discussed the interplay between the MEDC Executive Committee and the Michigan Strategic Fund Board, metrics and scorecard process and planning, and the political landscape as those topics relate to the PNC subcommittee. I'm going to ask Markey Justice, Vice President of People Services for the MEDC, to provide an overview of the proposed compensation and salary changes.
Great, thanks, Krista. Good morning, everyone. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today and share these updates to the framework of how we compensate and reward our employees at MEDC. Next slide, Levon. Thank you. As a reference for our new members, the Personnel and Compensation Subcommittee is charged with the development, implementation, and oversight of the overall personnel and compensation strategy for MEDC. With this charge, the MEDC staff and the PNC subcommittees have engaged and discussed necessary updates to the corporate compensation policy to ensure our practices are relevant to our current state and support the attraction, retention, and development of our biggest asset, our talent of Team MEDC. Next slide, please. A little background on our compensation policy that has brought us to today's actions. MEDC's current compensation philosophy and pay grade structure was established in 2011 with 8 pay grades. At the time, annual merit pay was the primary advancement tool. There were some policy changes in 2016 that included a move from merit pay to a standard across the board cost of living adjustment only. Also that year, the variable pay component was introduced and the pay structure changed from 8 to 10 pay grades. Beyond that, the only changes that have occurred have been the biannual pay range review to ensure we're meeting market rates. Next slide. So why are we updating now? Since that time, we've experienced changes. The organization's changed. We've updated and recommitted to new cultural values. And as you've heard today, we're facing various crosswinds or headwinds and cross currents. In addition, through various forms of feedback, including employee engagement surveys, observations through the hiring process, review of exit interviews, we've come to learn that updating aspects of our current policy is essential for retaining our talent and to enable improved planning and fiscal management. Compensation is really the intersection between people, performance, policy, and pay, and our current framework no longer reflects the evolving needs at those crossroads. Based on employee feedback and our commitment to transparency, we're proposing updates that better align rewards with performance outcomes, ensure fairness across roles, better support annual planning, and reinforce policies that support a high-performing, engaged workforce. Next slide. So in mid-2024, an MEDC cross-functional team with budget, people services, learning and organizational development all came together and engaged with an outside consultant to begin this work. The project team's main goals were to update our framework for policy decisions, clearly identify relative worth of positions, and establish a consistent and transparent job architecture for career pathing, as well as complete updated market pricing. Out of the recommendations we'll be reviewing next, what we're asking for approval of today is approval of the updated pay ranges to align with market rates and approval of updated policy components to allow us to execute on a phased implementation plan. Next slide. So first, just a quick overview of these policy components for comparative reference of what will be changing. Our current pay ranges have a varied, somewhat limited range distribution currently. Right now, the primary earning mechanism is that cost of living adjustment, as well as use of reclassifications or change in pay levels for salary growth. Employees do have the option for up to 8% variable pay paid annually, subject to budget availability, and then subject to meeting organizational, divisional, and individual performance metrics. Promotional rates for internal employees currently are set at specific percentages based on job level and are limited only to that. Right now, off-cycle adjustments can occur 3 times a year and are not connected to specific performance data or planning cycles. Beyond the variable pay, there's really no performance pay eligibility, nor is there a structured pay progression policies. Lastly, there's not a current mechanism for pay reduction when significant position changes may occur. The project team's work started with revising the organizational compensation philosophy. This is important as the compensation philosophy really serves as the formal framework that outlines our approach to compensating employees. And it serves as a guiding principle for determining how pay and rewards are structured. Focusing on these 4 recommended pillars, as you can see, will foster a culture of accountability and excellence and will ensure our pay practices are fair, motivating, and sustainable. In addition to the compensation philosophy, we aim to create a more objective way to internally evaluate positions. A scoring rubric was established to help create a numerical way to review and rank positions internally based on duties and impact to the organization. In this analysis, MEDC agreed that the displayed factors above would be used in valuing positions internally. Next slide. So as mentioned, one of the approval requests today is for updated pay ranges. What you're seeing here is market relevant pay ranges that have been proposed based on the results of the benchmark analysis. Through the analysis, we found that 16% of our benchmarks were leading the market, while the majority of titles, 84%, were lagging market midpoints. One of the goals with the range update is to align our pay grades with the market rates and to see a linear regression line for consistent progression across pay grades. So you'll see our orange line is our current rates, the blue line is our goal rate to obtain that consistent line. So what we're seeing here today is there will be increases to levels 3 through the 8 midpoints and decreases to levels 2, 9, and 10. In addition, we've increased range spreads of each pay range to support our intention of greater movement through the pay grades. Next slide. So moving into the policy components, we'll talk through pay placement, pay progression, and other policy mechanisms. Pay placement policies are intended to guide how employee salaries are set within a defined pay range at the time of hire, promotion, demotion, or lateral movement. Having placement policies are important in supporting compensation decisions that are fair, consistent, and aligned with organizational values. A few of the proposed changes include, for new hires, there'll be a standard placement in the first quartile of the range unless they meet specific documented criteria. Criteria such as directly relevant experience, education, specialized or in-demand skills, or possibly a hard-to-fill position. Another key change here is for internal promotions. The promotional rate for internal folks moving to a new position would match the same placement rules as external hires to support internal growth and retention. Next, to support this placement criteria, we will be creating pay bands within the pay ranges for consistent application of these policies. For example, we would see a pay band that could include an entry level or new hire towards the beginning of the range, developing pay band, proficient, and then an expert band towards the top of the range. Next, for lateral moves, we're not proposing any changes to those rules, but an evaluation would occur to ensure logical placement into these newly created bands. Lastly, for those moving to a position in a lower pay level, voluntarily or involuntarily, we'll review and adjust pay based on the same criteria and bands as other pay placement policies. So pay progression. Pay progression policies are intended to guide how employees advance through their ranges over time. Our recommendations include a model where employees progress through their pay range based on satisfactory performance with opportunities for accelerated movement based on exceptional contributions. We want to recognize effort, not just inflation. With moving to a performance-focused model, those who contribute the most receive the greatest reward, reinforcing the culture of accountability and excellence. A performance-based model is more flexible, strategic, and aligned with modern workforce expectations. In addition, you'll note we are recommending moving from a 3 times a year request process to aligning all pay decisions with the annual performance process timeline, building in not just annual performance objectives, but also talent planning processes that involve a deeper analysis of skills and competencies. In addition, we'll be including an oversight and calibration component to the salary planning review, so pay decisions are reviewed and calibrated across departments for consistency, instead of just department leadership and HR completing approvals. By integrating these pay decisions into the broader planning cycle, we can allocate resources more responsibly, reinforce performance goals, and maintain internal equity. This alignment also promotes transparency and accountability, ensuring that salary adjustments are not made in isolation, but as part of a deliberate, data-informed strategy that supports both our people and our mission. A few additional policy components that we are looking to update. Our reclassification procedures, we will be updating these procedures to specify rules around level progression and limit the timing of these requests to align again with that annual performance cycle. For variable pay, we are proposing to rethink this structure. The important point here is we want to better align variable pay and incentive pay with individual performance metrics. As you've heard yesterday, as the financial strategy team reimagines the annual planning and scorecard process, we will need to ensure any direct incentive pay is tied to the outcomes of that work. For our market review of pay ranges, we would maintain the biannual schedule that's currently in place. We recommend continuing this practice to include a hybrid of public and private organizations with the goal of meeting the market to ensure competitiveness. However, one additional implementation support project that we'd engage in as it relates to the market review is to begin a job title standardization review and update of our job architecture. This project work revealed that job titles can have an impact both upwardly and downwardly on market data results. So the goal here is to create a standardized job architecture system to use for compensation decisions. Lastly, we would like to build in specific criteria to administer recruitment-related lump sums for hard-to-fill positions only to provide better guardrails around this pay mechanism. So as you can see or already know, compensation administration is complex. It requires successful systems in place in order to obtain the outcomes we're trying to achieve. Because of this, we're asking for approval of what is presented today and further detailed in your packet to allow us to continue to work on building and finalizing these human capital management support systems, as well as a detailed and robust policy. Upon approval of the updated pay ranges and policy components, we'll be working on the outlined phased implementation pieces over the next quarter and fiscal year. And finally, here's a preview of our anticipated timing of next steps. Upon approval, we'll be jumping into finalizing the organizational structure and job architecture guidelines, finalization of the detailed policy criteria, and ensuring proper communication and training occurs across the organization. We will also be working to further review the results of our project data to complete a pay level analysis of our current positions. For October of this year, which is the timing of our usual pay adjustment cycle under the current structure, we would still be recommending the cost of living adjustment practice to allow for training, implementation of new systems before moving to the merit pay recommendations. So then we anticipate fiscal year 27 would be the first revised merit pay performance cycle. So in closing, these recommendations reflect our commitment to fairness, transparency, strategic alignment. By adopting these updates, we're not only responding to employee feedback, we're positioning the organization to attract, retain, and reward the talent that drives our mission forward. Thank you again for your time. Open up for any questions at this time.
I'd just like to say how grateful I am that Marky and her team have done such a thorough and thoughtful approach to this. It's been a long process. This is not a knee-jerk, very data-driven, market-driven, competition-driven, and the phased-in approach that you're talking about, instead of just trying to implement it all at once. I just think you've done a great job, and I think it'll be greatly received because of your approach. So thank you.
Thank you.
Marky, thank you for the for this presentation. I have a couple of questions. One, anytime that I've seen, which I think is really good work, this type of analysis on compensation, and when you move to especially the with pay bands and such, typically there's a level of cost to that, because you're right sizing some things, as you mentioned in there. Some people, you find that they may not be paid enough according to the bands. Some are paid too much. My first question would be will there be, or has there been, that analysis of what a cost may look like? And then the second question, when you move also to performance-based, with performance-based compensation, someone has to assess the performance. And so I'm wondering, what does that professional development look like for those supervisors who will be doing that? Because now your performance assessment, it means a little bit more now, right? You've got you got people looking at you, employees looking at you, saying, if you rate me lower, then that means something to my pocketbook. But at the same time, this is what this is what we require. This is what excellence looks like. So that first question around cost, but secondly, also that plan, not that I have to see any detail on it, but just knowing that there's some level of plan to help those supervisors when it comes to assessing and evaluating employees, so that we're really going to be able to truly feel strong about performance-based. Thank
Yes,
you.
thanks for the question. I think first on the cost analysis, currently we did do a comp ratio analysis of just implementing the pay ranges as they were. It was a minimal cost, but one of the reasons for that phase implementation will be to relook at the levels. So we have our pay ranges based on market data, but like I said, one of those data points that we recognized was maybe our positions weren't completely leveled the correct way. So in order to have a full true cost analysis at that point, that's why we're not, requesting to adopt the pay ranges immediately, because we want to level set them before we do that. So no, we would be doing that before we recommend any specific percentage amounts. And that also goes to just having the annual planning process each year to make sure that whatever is recommended is in line with our budget. Hannah and I have become best friends, and so we work very closely to ensure that that piece will be considered. On the performance piece, you're completely right. And I think that goes also to the phased implementation plan. Because we, in order to have performance pay, we need to have a strong performance management system. We're working on the annual planning to do that. We have a very strong organizational and talent development department now that has been with us for 2 years. And so Laura McGuire, she leads that, and she has talent planning processes in place. We have performance boot camp to actually show managers how to do performance plans, performance improvement plans. And then as it relates to compensation, what I would be proposing is almost like a merit matrix. So we know exactly, like, if you're in this bubble, then you would get this amount. If we have this bubble, and so we would, have those guardrails in place to help managers make those decisions.
Ms. Lejeune has a question online.
Hi, can you all hear me okay? Hello, can you hear me?
You're trying to hear you.
Okay, I will type it in the chat.
Okay, wait, it's out.
That's
Okay.
1 second.
Oh.
If you'd like, you can also type it in the chat and we can read it out for you.
She should be coming up.
Here we go.
We can see the chat. We're about to read it.
It's-
I noticed the market would be public and private. What is the actual peer group we plan to survey? Public and private is very broad.
We already completed the survey based on, this year we used 3 market sources. Specifically, we used ERI, PRN, which is mainly not-for-profit, and then salary.com database. We limited that search to Midwest, which each of the survey data points are specific based on how you can get down and dirty with the data, but states that are nearby. And also by industry as well, so. Which is, I will add, is standard, our practice. That piece has not changed over the last, gosh, I think since 2011, we do a biannual review with the hybrid of public and private to ensure, again, competitiveness, because we are, competing against both sectors when it comes to hiring our talent.
Thank you.
Did that answer your question or do you have a follow-up?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Great. Thank you, Marky, and thank you, Krista. I think we have 2 votes that we're going to take and the opportunity to discuss independently on each vote. The first is to approve the revised corporate compensation policy components. Do I have a motion on that? Moved,
Support, Bill Pink.
moved and supported. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, we can move to the roll call vote.
Miss Artisana?
Yes.
Miss Flynn?
Yes.
Miss Gonzalez? Miss Gonzalez? Not seeing Miss Gonzalez responding. Miss Grassi?
Yes.
Miss Hall?
Yeah.
Miss Hamud? Mr. Lutz?
Yes.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Miss Montgomery Tavern?
Yes.
Dr. Pink?
Yes.
Mr. Sutherland?
Yes.
Mayor Taylor? Miss Tomina? Motion passes.
Great, thank you. Now moving on to the revised compensation structure. Do I have a motion for that?
And so move.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, we can move to the roll call vote.
Miss Artisana?
Yes.
Miss Flynn?
Yeah.
Miss Gonzalez? Miss Gonzalez? I see you said yes. I see 2 yeses, so I believe that was for the last vote and this vote. Miss Grassi?
Yes.
Miss Hall?
Yeah.
Miss Hamud? Mr. Lutz?
Yes.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Miss Montgomery Tavron?
Yes.
Dr. Pink?
Yes.
Mr. Sutherland?
Yes.
Mayor Taylor?
Yes.
Miss Tomina? The motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on to the Finance and Subcommittee report. Beth, I believe you have updates.
Yes, so I'll give a brief, on behalf of the Finance Committee, I'll give a brief readout on May, June, and July meetings. We have 1 action item, which is the budget timeline, so we'll review that. Later in the agenda, Hannah will give us a more operational report on the budget. And even later in the agenda, we'll talk about the CFO search. So if I look at the May, June, and July meetings, in May, the committee reviewed our investment portfolio and where that stands, and we'll review that in more detail with the full executive committee later in the year. In June, we looked more specifically at the budget timeline. For those of you who've been around for a while, we've always had a nice little budget timeline where we reviewed and approved the budget like now. We will not be able to do that this year for a variety of reasons, and we will discuss that in a few minutes. At the July meeting yesterday, we reviewed, much like all of the other committees, our interactions with MSF, our policies and procedures. So that's the work of the Finance Committee. And now we can look at the budget timeline, and I'll ask Hannah to do a brief review of that.
Thanks. So on this slide, the previously approved timeline is on the left and the new proposed revised timeline is on the right. There are really just two main changes reflected here. One is essentially adding the option of doing a first quarter only budget approval in September on that September 25th date. Due to the uncertainty in the state budget, it may make the most sense for us to just approve the first quarter's funding for the MEDC, allow operations to continue as normal, pay people, have software, do the things that we need to do to keep the lights on essentially. But hold off on making any bigger decisions about allocation of resources until the state budget is more clear and finalized. The other change that's outlined in here is the addition of a final approval in October or November. If we do a quarter one only budget approval in September, we will need to loop back and get a full year budget approval done before the end of the calendar year in order to continue sort of normal operations after December. So those are the two adjustments that are reflected in the revised timeline.
So I'd open it up before we ask for a vote for any questions. So for the new people, we don't generally wait till the 11th hour to do an approval. We've been pretty good about doing them further in advance, but we have little control, as you guys might guess, over the state budget. So it causes us to delay these approval processes. But if anybody has any suggestions on how to do that more quickly or get the state budget approved or anything like that, or has any specific questions for our brilliant interim CFO, Hannah, be delighted to open it up to questions. No suggestions on a faster state budget? Disappointing. Okay. I'll turn it back over to the boss.
Thank you so much. And nothing online, I take it? No, great. Okay. So the Uniform Budget and Accounting Act requires MEDC to adopt a timeline for the development and approval of the annual fiscal year budget. The request then before this board is for you to approve a revised budget timeline for the fiscal year 2026 corporate budget. So I have a motion to approve the adoption of the revised fiscal year 2026 budget timeline. Moved by Fadwa. Do I have a second? Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, we can take the roll call vote.
Miss Artisana,
Yes.
Miss Flynn,
Yes.
Miss Gonzalez. Yes, support. Miss Grassi,
Yes.
Miss Hall,
Yes.
Miss Hamud. Mr. Lutz,
Yes.
Mr. McLaughlin,
Yes.
Miss Montgomery Tabra,
Yes.
Dr. Pink,
Yes.
Mr. Sutherland, Mayor Taylor.
Yeah.
Miss Tomina.
Yeah.
The motion passes.
Thank you so much. Moving to strategic planning and subcommittee report with Dr. Pink.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and not only welcome to the chair, but also welcome to the MEDC, to the Executive Committee. It's good to have you. Also good to have you, Mayor Taylor, on this committee and joining, in spite of its chair, the best committee on the MEDC, the Strategic Planning Committee. We're glad to have you on there. That's okay. I figured, but you already had your time though, Beth. So I'll be brief because our meeting that we had, the subcommittee in July, had a bit of discussion. A lot of our discussion having to do with, as several other committees, with the interplay and some of the desired interplay between the MEDC Executive Committee and the Michigan Strategic Fund Board, and wanting to see what that could look and sound like specifically, since we are the strategic planning committee, subcommittee, and how strategic planning can be so intertwined within the two, and having the question and the conversation of being more intentional around that. Also talked about the metrics and scorecard process and planning, and just some of the political landscape that we're dealing with right now that affects all of that. I will say that our conversation was a bit brief in comparison to other strategic planning meetings we've had, mainly because of some of the transition we're having on that committee with Santa Ono stepping away from that committee, obviously, and now also bringing some new committee members online with the subcommittee. Now feeling that we're getting a bit better traction in terms of who those committee members are, so that we now can start in on more of the type of work we were doing previously. But happy to entertain any questions, but it was really to start level setting a bit better in terms of what our strategic planning subcommittee will now be embarking upon with a new look in that regard. That is all, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Despite you having claimed best subcommittee ever, we do have another subcommittee, Audit and Governance Subcommittee report. Tom.
Yeah, thank you. So the Audit and Governance Subcommittee met in May, and we were provided insurances regarding or updates regarding insurance coverages. That was in May. In June, we were made aware that the Michigan Office of Auditor General will be performing an audit of the MEDC reporting processes. And then our July subcommittee meeting was what you've already heard reported numerous times here, strategic relationship between MEDC and strategic fund, metrics and scorecard processes, and of course, the political landscape as it might affect the Audit and Governance Subcommittee. So that's our report.
Any questions? Great, thank you, Tom. Moving on to operational updates, and I'd invite anybody on MEDC staff who has an update to provide it now.
Apparently, that's me. So you can go to the next slide, Luan. So just one item we wanted to go over a little bit more here. Because of the delay in the state budget process is driving the delay in the MEDC budget process, wanted to just take a second and give a brief update on sort of where things stand at the moment on the state budget. This slide shows the FY25 state appropriations as they were approved. The second column is the executive recommendation from the governor's office. And then the final column on the right is the current version of the FY26 Senate proposed budget. You may notice that there's no house numbers on here. That's because there are no house numbers yet, which is part of the delay in us being able to anticipate and move forward on the corporate side. I don't know that it makes a lot of sense to get super into all of the details at the moment, but want to highlight that the FY25 and the governor's proposal for 26 are pretty similar. There's some elimination of one-times and addition of new one-times, which is pretty normal. But the Senate proposal for 26 is a little more different, which again makes that planning more difficult. It's harder to tell what direction things are heading in. Yeah. Oh, yes, that, let's see, the second column, the business attraction and community revitalization number, that should be 100 million and not 100,000. That's a typo. That we discovered this morning, and did not get a chance to change. That's a bad, big typo. Yeah, so probably the biggest ongoing item that is different is the 100 million for business attraction and community revitalization is proposed at 40.6 in the Senate currently. They also have some different one-time items that would have sort of an impact on how we allocate our human resources potentially maybe, but. Is it potentially because they're increasing the funds? Where there's 40 million and what is that? Yeah, some of, I think my understanding of what the Senate proposal it reflects is a desire to have some flexibility to respond to some things, which are maybe on the second slide, if you want to go to the next one. Some of the one-time items, they have $100 million in there for economic relief. I think that's the shift that they're making, is freeing up some dollars from the BACR line to be able to do some more specific economic relief and response based on tariffs and other things that are going on in the environment. That's it. Any questions on this? Again, I don't think this is where it's gonna land. We don't really know where it's gonna land, so hashing out all of the details is maybe not essential, but wanted to sort of give you an overview of how different the proposals are at this point. Okay,
Thank you.
that's it for me.
Over to me. Thanks, everybody, for your time this morning. You can go ahead and flip right into the next slide there, Christina. Or Levon, sorry. So we'll give you a couple updates on some operational activities. One is we are rolling out effective September 2nd, a formalized return to office policy. So currently decisions about frequency for in-person required days has really been left up to the division leads. And we are now establishing a consistent policy that will apply to everybody across the organization. We did make this announcement in February. We wanted to give our teams time to make some adjustments in planning, particularly those with young children. It can be very, very hard to, secure all the necessary home care or out of home care for children. But so what we are doing is shifting everybody into required in-person 2 days a week at a minimum. Some places could, or some divisions could require more if needed based on their duties. That is for folks who are not field-based. Just for some background, we have had field-based employees since the beginning of the MEDC, led by Matt McCauley, our regional development team. Those are folks that live and work in the regions out and about all across the state. So they will remain field-based. They have always been field-based. They will remain field-based. Everybody else will be given a hybrid designation, required to be in office 2 days per week. And we left the days of the week up to the division leads, though everybody will be in the office on Tuesday. So that's going to be a little bit of a transition for some folks to be elbow to elbow with your teammates again. But really looking forward to some better collaboration, increased communication. We have a lot of new people that have started over the last 5 years that will help get them fully assimilated, integrated into our various work streams. So that will take effect September 2nd. We're just working through implementation of that. Any questions on that policy? Next slide. And finally, this may be a little bit of old news, but we had to undertake some realignment this year. There were some departures of senior leadership with Jen Nelson, Carrie Ebersol Singh, and Lynn Feldposh. Lynn retired, Jen and Carrie pursued some other opportunities. That really necessitated the changes. However, we did want to take the opportunity to really look at how we're operating and what we're doing and make sure that we're structured to meet the moment that we're in. As Quentin noted and others have noted, there are some cross currents and headwinds and some things that we need to be addressing differently than we have in the past. So what you see here on the screen is intended to reflect how we think we need to be structured right now. Notably, I think, Michelle, we re-established or reconstituted a combined external affairs team, comms team, marketing, so that all of our messaging and perception management is now aligned under one structure, where it was before a little bit splintered. Not splintered is too strong a word, but just to bring this back in to ensure that we've got very consistent messaging coming out of our teams. We, beyond just these org chart changes, are really trying to internalize cross-functional matrixed approaches of all these things. These are just where you sit, but we have to work cross-functionally, right, to really advance the Make It in Michigan strategic plan. We've also tried to organize ourselves internally around a few themes, if you will, looking at process, planning, finance, performance, and perception management. We're organizing ourselves again internally around those themes and pulling together project teams with representation across all business units on all kinds of internal and external projects of all shapes and sizes. So look forward to hearing any feedback you have as we continue to chug this forward and further align and operationalize the org chart. But are there any questions on that? Or any other comments, Quentin or Michelle, you want to make on that?
No, I would just add that while this functional structure, some things shifted, the teams reporting up through them, jobs remain. This was not a disruption or a significant change in the work that people are doing every day. That work continues. It is just more, to Kristen's point, how we organize it in a way to encourage greater collaboration across the organization.
Yeah, and really to get towards faster, more streamlined decision-making and to, as always, prioritize better customer service, both for our internal and external customers. So that's always one of our guiding North Stars, if you will. So again, if you have questions today or later, feel free to let us know. And Levon, if you want to go to that next one. And finally, just an update on where things are at. We, as you know, Jill departed the organization in May, and so we did post the position. It was posted through June and have spent the last few months with some travel schedules and others going through all the applications. There were 52 applicants received, a lot of really strong candidates. So screening through those, scheduling interviews, and we'll be proceeding with that. So we expect that process to wrap up probably in August, mid-August, I would say, but very excited to bring on a permanent CFO. Hannah's doing a great job as the interim, but I don't think she wants it permanently, unfortunately. So, but she's doing a great job, and she's a key member of our interview panel when we get these things rolling forward. So, as we'll keep you posted on that as it unfolds here through the rest of the summer. Any other questions on that?
Thank you. Any other updates? Any new business that any committee member would like to discuss? Oh, I think that brings us to our adjournment. Our next meeting is September 24th at 9:30 in Bath Township. Looks like there's going to be a virtual option for those who are unable to join in person. And we're going to send out materials and additional details as we get closer to that meeting. Otherwise, we're officially adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.